to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose. We're here to dig into some Rugby Union action, and there is plenty happening in the world of Rugby Union. We're certainly looking forward to the Women's Rugby World Cup quarterfinals coming this weekend. Going to dig into those, and it's probably a great spot to start if we talk about the fact that, well, first of all, the Australians qualified, but it was a little bit of a bizarre one in terms of looking at the pool and how they went about qualifying. They went into their last game against England with a significant advantage against the US. They had a 135-point differential benefit. And basically, what they needed was the US margin of victory over Samoa and Australia's margin of defeat against England, the world number ones, the top team, the favourites to win this. The expectation is England will take this out, this tournament. The expectation was that Australia were 80-1 chances to even win that game. So it was very much about those margins. And they had to keep it below 135. They knew that the US in the lead up had beaten Samoa by 60. So all they needed to do was lose by 74 or less. Australia actually got out of the blocks first and scored first against England, a little bit of a shock. It was their one and only try, however. They did end up being defeated 47-7, but it did mean that they went through in second place after having initially defeated Samoa 73-0 and then having a 31-all draw where they came back late against the US in their second pool game. That was crucial. Had they lost to the US, they would have bowed out at that point, essentially accepting that unless Samoa could have upset the US. Remember, this is a Samoa team that ended up conceding 225 points and scoring just 3 for their tournament. They needed them to beat the US. That would have been the other thing they would have been relying on. In the other pools, things were pretty straightforward heading into the final games. Canada and Scotland had already locked up their progression. The winner of their game, being the third pool game, would advance to the knockout stage in the higher quarterfinal position, and the loser would proceed to the lower. Canada winning comfortably 40-19. Again, a top 4 side continuing on. Similarly, New Zealand and Ireland had the same situation as they headed into their game, and New Zealand a shutout, 40-0. A comprehensive win over the Irish and dominant the Silver Ferns marching through as the top of Pool C. And again, Pool D, same story. France and South Africa went into the final game knowing that the winner would take top spot and the loser of that game would take second spot. And it was a 57-10 win for them. In other games in that pool, 64-3 in the final game for Italy over Brazil, meaning Italy finished third. Similarly, Japan eked past Spain in Pool C to get third place there, 29-21. And Fiji defeated Wales 28-25 to go through. So that was a tight one as well. But Fiji finished third in their pool. So a really good showing. I think we're starting to see the future of women's rugby. We're starting to see some of these countries. Fiji put up a little bit of a fight against Scotland. Didn't quite do the same against Canada, much more dominant. We saw Spain put up a fight against Ireland and Japan. So again, promising signs from Spain. The Japanese probably would have liked to have had their early game against Ireland back over, but they finished well with that win over Spain. And Italy and Brazil, look, they were purely outclassed in most of their games. Italy, a little bit of fight against South Africa, but otherwise it was fairly, as expected, to script the majority of the matches. And realistically, the teams that we expected to go through did go through to the quarterfinals, the top 8 in the world, heading through as the pre-tournament seedings essentially looked at with those, the shape-ups there. I think the only real surprise would be South Africa coming through. Italy had been higher ranked, but South Africa had been a big improver with investing in their rugby, and getting that win over Italy in the second game was crucial to that, which now means that the quarterfinals shape up starting over the weekend. We're going to have these matches with New Zealand and South Africa at late night Australian time, 10 p.m. Aussie time. They will start things off with a huge clash, a Southern Hemisphere clash, New Zealand versus South Africa. You would expect this Kiwi side, you've got youngsters like Braxton Sorensen McGee, one of the standout teenagers alongside one of the Aussies we'll talk about in a little bit. Sorensen McGee, her alongside the likes of Georgia Miller, who's just been an absolute weapon. What a breakaway. She's been a phenomenal star so far through this World Cup, the Kiwi loose forward. I think the two of them, this Kiwi team is absolutely stacked across the park. And yes, South Africa's got some stars of their own. I really like the look of Asese Hele. Look, she's an absolute wrecking ball. She can just burst through defenders, and it's probably been a key part of the heart and soul of this South African team, which, as I said, based on ranking, probably the most surprising of the teams. Also really impressed with what I've seen from their scrum half, Nadine Roos. She's been good for the Springbok women, and she's probably close to the best 9 in the competition at the moment, just on pure form. She's been really strong. So the South Africans aren't without an argument in terms of, competing for periods of this game, but I just don't see them getting anywhere close to New Zealand across 80 minutes. In terms of, when you have a look and a conversation around what the expectation is heading into this, it's a comfortable New Zealand win, and I think that's exactly what we'll see. We'll probably see them win this, by a margin of, 40-odd. Wouldn't be surprising. I think the Kiwis will march through and they'll set up a semi-final clash with the winner of the next quarterfinal, which will be played at 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, our time, which is the Australian game in Bristol, up against Canada. And again, this is a huge ask. As I said, the Canadians went through undefeated. They scored 147 points, conceded just 26 in the pool games. They are ranked number 2 in the world for a reason. They are an absolute powerhouse. They have been for a long time, the Canadians. We look at people like Julia Schell. She scored 6 tries against Fiji. That's just phenomenal in one game, and she became just the second player ever, male or female, to score 6 tries in a game. And she's been quieter in the last 2 weeks since that game. She's going to be right up for it, though, in this Australia-Canada quarterfinal, and really looking forward to seeing how she can go. In other players there, the big one I want to talk about from the Aussies is certainly the kid, as she is better known, Caitlin Hulse. She's 18. She turns 19 next week, and she is absolutely a superstar for the Aussies. She's part of a key core of New South Wales Waratahs players who are playing for the Wallaroos. And look, they're absolutely going to have to play out of their skin to get a win here against the Canadians. That's the unfortunate reality of this for the Aussies, and I just don't see that happening at this stage. I think Canada will march through this one, and unfortunately that will bring things to a halt for the Aussies in terms of their advancement in the tournament. But again, they've hit where we sort of expected. As I said, there was a chance there with a plucky US side that maybe the Aussies didn't make the quarterfinals, but they fought back for a good start and got themselves into this position. But I think it'll be New Zealand and Canada coming through on this side. On the other side, it's all Northern Hemisphere. So, 5 Northern Hemisphere teams in the quarterfinals. And it's all sort of, from that, the 6 nations, as we know it, in the men's that are competing over on the other side of the draw. It's just the way it's kind of worked out. We've got the 3 Southern Hemisphere teams and Canada on one side, and then all the European nations on the other. It'll be France up against Ireland at 10 o'clock on Sunday evening, or Sunday night, playing at Exeter. And again, I think this will probably be the closest of the quarterfinals, but I think France will be too strong. They've scored plenty of points in the pool games, 165, just conceding 15 points across their 3 pool games. They had a shutout against Italy. South Africa did get 10 points against them, and Brazil got 1 try in an 84-5. So I see the French just being far too strong in this one. I think they'll outclass the Irish. Look, the Ireland side are plucky. We've seen that. They dug deep. They got through their pool with 2 wins in their first 2 games, 42-14 against the Japanese, 43-27 against the Spanish. But they came back to, I guess, earth with that 40-0 humbling by New Zealand. And when you have a look at the strength and the depth of the French side, again, one of the top 4 sides in the world. They do sit just behind New Zealand in the rankings, but I think they'll be too strong for Ireland. If there is someone who could spring an upset here, as I said, I think this is the match, but I just still think that this will probably be a France victory by maybe 18 to 20 points, 2 to 3 tries, the difference. But this would be the one well worth watching if you're on the Eastern Seaboard as well. It's a good time slot, 10 o'clock. If you're backing up from that 1 a.m. watching the Aussie women the night before, or earlier that night. Speaking of 1 a.m, it will be the final quarterfinal again from Bristol. All the quarterfinals will be at Exeter and Bristol. And the winner of this will head on to play the winner of that France and Ireland game. It is England versus Scotland. And the English, they are just absolute superstars at this. They are a dominant force. We have seen that with what they dished up in the pool games. And again, I think that they're very short favourites to win it at home here. I really love watching Jess Breach. The English managing their hype and expectations, and she is absolutely electric. She got her 50th try against Australia last week, and she's going to keep on, flying along, especially with Ellie Kildare out with concussion. So watch Breach. She's electric. She just lights it up. She's probably one of the most exciting for me, outside of obviously the bias of being an Aussie and just loving watching what Halse is doing at fullback at just 18 years of age. And I love the story back onto Halse about her talking about how Christian Cullen is her idol, which is quite an interesting full circle as they headed into their final pool game against the English last week, because they're coached by John Mitchell, who of course is the man who dropped Christian Cullen all those years ago, and thinking that Christian Cullen would have retired from rugby a year after she was born. She's obviously gone back and watched some highlights of his time in the All Blacks, but she drifts across, she runs those ghosting lines like he does, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing just a little bit of that hopefully against Canada. But unfortunately, yeah, I don't really see any real upsets in this. As I said, Ireland are the one that maybe, if I'm looking at the punting point of view and you want to, take a bit of an underdog with a head start on the line, then maybe that's where I'd look at there. So it's certainly going to be an interesting one from them. But I think, as I said, that it'll just be a straight progression for those four. Once we get to the semi-finals, which we'll talk about next week in the lead up to those games, then we might be starting to talk about some bit more evenly matched. I think the top four in the world, we're starting to get a bit more into the melting pot, as you will. Quickly with the Rugby Championship before we wrap up, obviously this is really heating up. The Aussies came from behind last week, and just what about that? Just fortitude, that grit, that ballsiness from Harry Wilson to say, no, let's go for the win here rather than take the draw and try and stay in the battle of these sorts of things. And they did. They pushed on, they ground on, and they got that try. And that's the sort of rugby that's going to bring fans back to Australian rugby. And it's great to see, I think, in terms of we got that win over in South Africa. Now we've got this win. We fought and got a win against the British and Irish Lions. We're starting to see a bit of a turning of the tide. It'll be interesting to see for Australia how they go backing up again against the Los Pumas. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how it is. This game's in Sydney on Saturday afternoon, so it'll be an absolute cracker. It's a sellout, but again, we've got some young Wallabies. There's a bit of a change when we have a look at the Wallabies side for this week, and Joe Schmidt's backed them to get the job done. And Ben Donaldson and Tom Liner, they're still out of action, but they should likely be back for the Bledisloe Cup. James O'Connor's now on the bench, so there's quite a lot going on, in terms of this lineup. So there's going to be quite a few players coming in. But Joe Schmidt's brought in, I think, 19, 20 debutants since he's taken over this Wallabies side. So he's certainly, taking control of this. But when you have a look at this team, we've got Billy Pollard, who's going to be, young at hooker. You start to see a few others. I mean, obviously Harry Wilson, Fraser McWright, Robert Valentini in the back row. That's really strong. White with Tane Edmed at 10. Look, I like what I see from Edmed. It's just about, is he ready to take that next leap? Time will tell. Nick White, though, he's winding it back. Paisami and Suwaliti in the centres, and then Toole, Kellaway and Jorgensen at the back three. So we'll have a look at how that all shapes up. As I said, a bit of opportunity coming off the bench. Salakai Loto, Tate McDermott, James O'Connor, Filippo Dargunu as well. So Angus Bell. So looking forward to seeing how that all shapes. I think they'll head in as slight favourites if we're looking at it from that point of view. But again, not supremely confident. But we'll see how it all shapes. From that scope, I guess. So it's going to be a good clash. We know that. And then you have a look at later on that night, New Zealand and South Africa, a key game for both the All Blacks and the Springboks. A win, if New Zealand and Australia win, they start to get a bit of a breakaway, and basically that'll, knock the South Africans and Argentinians out of contention of winning the Rugby Championship. But if those visiting sides can get the wins, well, all of a sudden, cat amongst the pigeons, it's neck and neck heading into the final games, and that'll put the pressure right on the Aussies because they're going to come up against the All Blacks in the final two games, and it's really starting to heat up. So looking forward to seeing how it shapes, who comes out on top. Big opportunity for New Zealand and Australia. It would then mean that Bledisloe, those first two games of the Bledisloe that double into the Rugby Championship, would determine the winner of the competition, essentially. There's still, some permutations there if a South Africa or an Argentina won both their games against each other, that they could then go forward. And again, lots of permutations, but I think a big advantage to New Zealand and Australia if they could win this, especially with bonus points. Australia missed out on a bonus point in their in one of their games, so again they sit 1 point behind the All Blacks on top of the table at the moment. But I'm suggesting that the Springboks and the and Los Pumas will probably go down in tight ones again. But we saw it last week. very little separating the team. 7 points over in New Zealand, 4 points up there in Townsville. It's going to be absolutely red hot. It'll be interesting to see this new look again for the Aussies, how that goes, and I'm excited to see it. It's going to be a great couple of games and lots of rugby across the weekend, so check it all out. We'll be back with the updates and another Daily Dose next week at some stage to talk about all of this. But until then, a big thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube, hit the bell down below so you get all those notifications and keep up to date with when we're dropping videos. And of course, if you want more Chris McPherson Show, you can catch us on all the social media channels. You can find us on X, on TikTok, on Facebook, and on Instagram at The Chris Mack Show is what to search for, or just search for the full title, The Chris McPherson Show. But until tomorrow, when we'll have some more content dropping for you on a few other pieces of sport that are happening around the space, including the Davis Cup. We're going to talk some tennis tomorrow with Christian Monaghan from the First Serve. Big thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.